Chatutuam, The Forgotten Island, A Christmas Tale of Terror. It was Christmas Eve when the storm came, fierce and relentless, sweeping the small fishing boat off course. Four friends, Ava, Liam, Nora, and Ethan, had planned a holiday retreat in the tropics. Instead, they found themselves stranded on a mist-shrouded island that wasn't marked on any map. The locals whispered about it in hushed tones, calling it Devil's Reef. But the friends brushed off the warnings as folklore. Now, as they stepped ashore, a chilling silence enveloped them.
Please like and
Does anyone
subscribe
else
Horror
feel
Room
like
channel.
we're being watched? Ava whispered, clutching her coat against the icy wind. The island wasn't warm like the mainland. Instead, it exuded an unnatural cold, and the air smelled faintly of rot. Gnarled trees with claw-like branches twisted toward the sky, and in the distance, a faint glow pulsed like a dying heartbeat. As they explored, the friends stumbled upon an abandoned village. The huts were decrepit, but strange carvings adorned every surface, symbols that seemed to writhe when looked at too long. At the center of the village stood a massive stone altar, smeared with what looked like fresh blood. "This isn't right," Ethan muttered, stepping back. "We need to leave. Now." But the tide had already trapped their boat against jagged rocks. They were prisoners of the island. That night, as they huddled around a fire, the villagers' stories resurfaced in Ava's mind. Legend spoke of a cursed island, home to an ancient spirit that demanded tribute every Christmas Eve. Those who trespassed without offering gifts would become the offerings themselves. A sudden wail pierced the darkness. It wasn't human. The sound was a guttural mix of sorrow and rage, echoing from the direction of the altar. "Stay together," Liam urged, but the shadows seemed alive, weaving through the trees. Nora disappeared first, her scream swallowed by the night. The others ran, their breaths clouding in the frigid air. But the forest was a labyrinth, every path leading back to the cursed village. When they returned to the altar, 3 gifts lay upon it: a lock of Nora's hair, Liam's bloodied watch, and Ava's scarf stained red. "What does it want?" Ethan shouted, his voice cracking. "It wants us," Ava realized, tears streaming down her face. "It's feeding off us." As the glow around the altar intensified, the friends saw them, figures emerging from the shadows. Not villagers, but twisted forms of those who had come before. Their hollow eyes burned with malevolence, their hands outstretched in silent invitation. One by one, the spirit claimed them, their screams fading into the howling wind. By morning, the island was silent once more. The village remained untouched, as though no one had been there for centuries. But if you listened closely, you could hear faint whispers carried by the breeze, promising the same fate to those who dared return. Some gifts are better left unopened. The Forgotten Island, A Christmas Tale of Terror, Part 2. Ava awoke to the oppressive weight of silence. She was no longer by the altar, but inside one of the crumbling huts. The air was damp and rank with decay, the walls etched with those same writhing symbols. She wasn't alone. Liam sat in the corner, his face pale, his hands trembling. "They took Ethan," he whispered, his voice hollow. "Dragged him into the forest. I couldn't stop them." Ava's pulse quickened. "We can't stay here. We have to find a way off this island." Liam shook his head. "There's no way out. Don't you see? The island wants us. It's alive." Ignoring his defeatist tone, Ava peeked through the hut's broken slats. The forest loomed, unnaturally still. But the altar in the village center still glowed faintly, a sickly heartbeat in the night. She could feel its pull, an almost magnetic force urging her closer. Before she could move, the symbols on the walls began to glow. Liam gasped, clutching his chest. It's inside me, he choked out. Ava rushed to him, but as she touched his shoulder, his skin turned ashen, crumbling like dry clay. Within seconds, he disintegrated into dust, leaving only his bloody watch behind. Ava stumbled back, horrified, her heart pounding in her ears. Then she heard it again, the wail. It echoed through the village, growing louder, closer. Ava grabbed the watch and bolted out of the hut, her mind racing. She had to think, had to survive. She remembered the villagers' whispers about the island demanding a tribute. Maybe there was a way to appease the spirit, to break free. But what could she offer? Her thoughts spiraled as the glow of the altar intensified, casting long, twisted shadows across the ground. The spirit's presence grew stronger. It wasn't just a sound or a glow. It was a feeling, a suffocating weight that pressed against her chest. Ava's breath came in short gasps as she stumbled toward the altar, clutching the watch in her trembling hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered, placing the watch on the stone surface. "Please, let me go." The glow dimmed, and for a moment, Ava thought it had worked. But then, the wail returned, deafening now, and the shadows around the altar coalesced into a monstrous form. Its face was featureless, but its presence radiated an ancient fury. "You cannot leave," a voice boomed, low and guttural, seeming to come from the earth itself. "You are mine." "No!" Ava screamed, backing away. "Take something else. Take anything." The spirit laughed, a sound that reverberated through her bones. "You misunderstand, child. It is not what you give. It is what you are." The shadows surged forward, engulfing her. Ava's screams were swallowed by the void as the island claimed its final victim. By dawn, the village stood as it always had, silent, empty, and waiting. On the altar, a new carving appeared, a faint outline of Ava's face, her eyes hollow, her mouth frozen in a silent scream. And the island waited, as it always did, for the next uninvited guest.